I was in a corporate boardroom, the contract for $1 billion deal glowing on the projector, when my phone buzzed. The hospital's number. My chest tightened. I answered in a whisper, expecting something small, something manageable. Instead, the nurse's voice cut through like glass. Your daughter is in critical condition. The world blurred. My pen slipped from my fingers, clattering on the polished mahogany table. Executives stared, confused. I barely heard them. Then came the part that hollowed me out completely. Your stepsister did this. And the detective won't act. Her husband is the CEO. For a second, I couldn't breathe. My name is Vanessa Reed. I'm 35. And if you think you know how this ends, stay tuned. What happens when power shields cruelty until someone stronger decides to break the shield? I raced to the hospital, my heels pounding across sterile floors, the scent of antiseptic stinging my throat. My little girl lay motionless, tubes running from her arms, machines beeping in steady rhythm. My hand shook as I touched her skin, cold and fragile. The nurse leaned closer, her eyes wet. Your stepsister came in furious. Security cameras caught part of it, but the detective said his hands are tied. Her husband runs the company that funds his department. For hours, I sat there in silence, watching my daughter fight for each breath, rage simmering beneath the grief. They thought their money made them untouchable. They thought I was powerless. What they didn't know was who I really was. By morning, federal agents stormed their corporate offices, briefcases of warrants in hand, their voices commanding. Glass doors shattered under flashing lights, servers were carried out in black cases, employees scattered like birds startled from a wire. And as my phone lit up with headlines, I whispered to myself, this isn't revenge. This is justice. The hospital's walls pressed in around me that night, humming with the quiet cruelty of waiting rooms. My daughter's tiny hand rested in mine, pale against my skin, machines breathing for her when she couldn't. Every beep, every flicker of light carved fury deeper into my chest. But beneath the grief, my mind sharpened. My stepsister thought she could hide behind her husband's empire. She thought a badge in his pocket meant immunity. They had no idea who they were dealing with. By dawn, the news broke like wildfire. Federal agents raided CEOs' offices. Reporters swarmed the glass tower downtown, cameras capturing agents wheeling out files and servers. Anchors speculated about fraud, offshore accounts, political bribes. While the world gasped, my phone buzzed with messages from numbers I hadn't seen in years. Is this your doing? Vanessa, what happened? I didn't answer. Because this wasn't about them. This was about my daughter, lying in that hospital bed because cruelty had been allowed to grow roots under the protection of money. At noon, the detective who had dismissed the case the day before showed up at the hospital, his face pale, his voice trembling. Mrs. Reed, we're reopening the investigation. Things have changed.
Changed.
As if it was luck.
As if it wasn't me.
I looked him dead in the eyes. You ignored her blood yesterday. Don't pretend today is justice. This is cleanup. He couldn't hold my gaze. That evening, I stood by the window of my penthouse, city lights flickering like nervous eyes. My daughter slept, her breathing steadier now, nurses moving gently around her. My reflection in the glass looked nothing like the woman they had dismissed as family disappointment years ago. They had tried to erase me with words. They had tried to cage me with hierarchy. Now, I was the storm tearing through their illusion of safety. And the storm had only begun. The raid was only the first domino. By the third day, headlines screamed across every platform. Corporate fraud scandal unveiled. Employees whispered to reporters. Photos of shredded documents hit the internet, and the CEO, my stepsister's husband, vanished behind a wall of lawyers. But none of it mattered to me more than the sound of my daughter's breathing. I sat at her bedside, listening, waiting for her eyes to open. Each flutter of her lashes was worth more than the billion-dollar collapse unraveling outside. Still, justice wasn't finished. My stepsister hadn't been seen since that night. The family buzzed with excuses. She didn't mean it. She was overwhelmed. It's all exaggerated. They didn't know I had the footage. The nurse slipped me a USB drive, grainy hospital security video of my stepsister storming down the hallway, shouting, her hands pushing too hard, my little girl's scream echoing faintly before the camera cut.
Proof.
Enough to shatter every lie. I held the drive in my hand, cold metal pressing into my palm. For years, they had dismissed me, the quiet one, the unimportant one, the woman in the shadow of their power. But power doesn't last when truth has teeth. And this truth was hungry. The detective called again, his voice almost pleading. Mrs. Reed, if you'd like to provide evidence, we can guarantee prosecution. I thought of his smirk 2 nights ago when he'd said, my hands are tied. Now his hands were shaking. I didn't answer right away. I stared at my daughter, her chest rising and falling, fragile but alive. This wasn't just about revenge anymore. It was about making sure they never had the power to hurt her or anyone else again. The 4th morning, the air in the hospital felt different. Nurses whispered in corners, their eyes flicking toward me with a mix of pity and respect. They had seen the headlines. They knew something was shifting.
My phone buzzed again.
This time, it wasn't the detective. It was my stepsister. A single, desperate message. We need to talk. Please don't let them destroy us. I stared at the screen, my jaw tightening.
Us.
She still thought we were bound together. That blood was a shield against consequence. I typed back one line. You did that yourself. Then I turned the phone face down. At my daughter's bedside, I brushed her hair gently from her forehead. She stirred, her eyes half opening for the first time. My throat tightened. You're safe now, baby. I promise. Outside the window, sirens wailed in the distance. The city was cracking open their empire, one subpoena at a time. By noon, the detective returned, his arrogance replaced by humility. Mrs. Reed, he said softly, we've received federal orders. Your stepsister is no longer untouchable. If you have the footage, he paused, almost ashamed. It could end this. I looked at him, holding the USB drive in my hand. For once, I didn't feel powerless. I didn't feel erased. I felt like the axis everything turned on. And for the first time, they couldn't stop me. That evening, I left the hospital for the first time in days. The city air was sharp, filled with flashing lights from news vans parked outside the courthouse. Reporters swarmed, chasing anyone connected to the scandal. I walked straight through them, the USB drive tucked safely in my purse. For years, I had been silent in family gatherings, ignored in boardrooms, dismissed as the less important Reed. Tonight, every camera lens turned toward me. Ms. Reed, do you have evidence? Are the rumors true? Did the CEO's wife attack your daughter? Their questions collided like thunder, but I didn't flinch. My heels clicked across the pavement with a rhythm of certainty. I wasn't here to perform. I was here to deliver. Inside the federal building, an agent met me at the door. We've been expecting you. His voice was calm, professional, but I caught the flicker of relief in his eyes. They had been chasing whispers. I was carrying proof. I placed the USB on the table, the small device heavier than any gold. This, I said, is the truth they tried to bury. He nodded, sliding it across to a technician. Within minutes, the footage lit up the monitor. Gasps filled the room. The shove, the scream, the fall. The undeniable moment my daughter's life had been jeopardized by someone who thought wealth was immunity. The agent looked at me, his voice steady. This is enough. I exhaled slowly, the weight in my chest easing for the first time. For years, they thought my silence was weakness. Tonight, it became the weapon that would undo them. The footage spread like wildfire. By the next morning, every major network replayed it on loop. My stepsister storming down the hospital corridor, my daughter's small frame colliding with the floor. The headlines were merciless. CEO's wife under federal investigation. My phone buzzed nonstop. Lawyers, reporters, distant relatives. Everyone wanted a piece of the story. I ignored them all. Instead, I sat at my daughter's bedside, holding her hand as she stirred awake again. Her eyes fluttered, her lips forming a weak smile. Mom, I swallowed hard, blinking back tears. I'm right here, baby. Always. For the first time since that call in the boardroom, I felt like I could breathe. Meanwhile, the family scrambled. Dad left a voicemail dripping with desperation. Vanessa, you can't let them arrest your sister. Think of the family name. The family name. That name had been used to silence me, to chain me, to keep me in line. Now it was nothing but a badge of shame. That evening, federal agents swarmed their estate. Neighbors filmed as my stepsister was escorted into a black car, her once perfect hair disheveled, her face pale. The CEO, her husband, stood helpless, drowning under the weight of financial crimes that no amount of influence could erase. I watched it all unfold from the hospital room, the news playing muted on the small television in the corner. My daughter squeezed my hand, her voice faint but clear. Are we safe now? I kissed her forehead. Yes, sweetheart. We're safe. Because justice had finally broken through walls that money built. And for the first time, the empire that mocked me was crumbling at my feet. The world moved quickly once the footage aired. Indictments followed within days. The CEO's face plastered every news outlet, headlines circling fraud, bribery, obstruction of justice. My stepsister's name, once spoken with pride at charity galas, now hissed through the press like poison. But for me, time slowed. My daughter's recovery became my world. Every day she grew stronger, sitting up, eating small bites, whispering questions about when we'd go home. I answered gently, holding her hand as though it tethered me to the earth. Still, messages slipped through the cracks. Cousins begged me to show mercy. An uncle emailed, urging me to think of the family's legacy. Even my father tried again. Vanessa, this could ruin us for good. Drop it while you can. Drop it. As if justice were a game of cards I could fold out of pity. I looked at my reflection in the hospital's window one night. Tired eyes, but steady. Stronger than the girl they used to overlook at holidays. Stronger than the woman dismissed in business meetings. Stronger than the daughter they labeled a disappointment. I whispered to myself, "You wanted me invisible, but now you can't escape the sight of me."
And it was true.
Reporters stopped asking about them and started asking about me. Who was Vanessa Reed? How did she stand so firm against a corporate empire? What did it mean to lead a billion-dollar deal one day and bring down corruption the next? The irony was sharp. The very family that had spent years silencing me had handed me a louder voice than I'd ever dreamed of. And I intended to use it, not for revenge. For closure. The boardroom gleamed with glass walls and sharp suits. I stood at the head of the table, pen in hand, finalizing a billion-dollar deal that would secure my company's future. The room buzzed with anticipation until my phone vibrated. The hospital's number. I hesitated, then answered. A nurse's voice, steady but urgent. Your daughter is in critical condition. My hand froze, the pen slipping from my grasp. Executives stared as the words tore through me. I whispered, "What happened?" The nurse's next sentence felt like ice in my veins. Your stepsister did this, and the detective won't act. Her husband is the CEO. For a moment, the air left the room. The deal, the contracts, the $1 billion, all meaningless. My daughter. My only child. Hurt. My name is Vanessa Reed, I'm 35. And if you think you know how this ends, stay tuned. What happens when cruelty hides behind power and discovers power can be broken? I rushed from the boardroom, heart pounding, heels striking marble. At the hospital, fluorescent lights buzzed overhead. My little girl lay still, machines keeping time in shallow beeps. I held her hand, cold and fragile, rage pressing against my ribs. They thought money was a shield. They thought influence would protect them. They didn't know who I was. By dawn, federal agents stormed their offices. Doors shattered. Servers seized. Headlines erupted. And my whisper turned into a vow. This isn't revenge. This is justice.